Good Christmas morning, everybody. This is Frater Ralph with Hermetic Temple Radio and Temple of the Infinite Universe. And I am going to start out today with a little talk about exotheology, psychic vampires, and anger-eating demons, and what you can do to protect yourself if you should ever encounter anyone that leaves you feeling emotionally drained. But first, I am going to play a short little Christmas carol to get us started off with. We're going to begin and end the show with a Christmas carol, and this one is called Joy to the World. Well, greetings once again, and Merry Christmas on this December the 25th at, well, what is it? 11 o'clock almost. I got 10:55 a.m. on my clock. And gosh, I woke up today, went about my day as usual, kind of did a little bit of my usual internet work. And we stayed up early, so stayed up late. I get up early, so I'm the only one in the house still that's wide awake. And I looked at the outdoor thermometer and surprised to see that we have a beautiful 70 degrees on the front porch here in Wheatland, Missouri on December the 25th. I mean, practically a spring day going on out there. Unusual, even for us. And God, there are still some folks out there who say that global warming is a hoax. I tell you, I've been witnessing these weather anomalies in this location for quite a few years now, and there is definitely something going on. But a lot of people just refuse to see it because they don't want to see it. And that kind of leads me into our topic today on exotheology. A lot of folks might ask, what is exotheology? And my answer is that it is a form of theology or spiritual practice that takes into account a lot of the things that most people normally overlook or don't even think of. And that is the possibility of extraterrestrial life and how that might affect and impact our spirituality, our global consciousness, or lack of global consciousness, cosmic consciousness, and our religions, our world religions. And we try to take into account, the bigger picture. Life, not just life here on Earth, but life elsewhere in the galaxy, in our known universe, and in the infinite multiverse. There's a lot going on out there that just flies under the radar of probably 90% of humanity. But there will come a day, an age of awakening, an age of disclosure, in which we will be brought into our place in the cosmos, be brought to a fuller awareness of the possibility, not the possibility, but the reality of other life forms out there. And we will come to know that, life, the universe, and everything is a heck of a lot broader than what we previously assumed. So exotheology takes into account all these things. Life on Earth, life in the cosmos, interrelations, our relationships with one another, and other beings. And what I've done in previous podcasts is kind of taken more of a cosmic approach to exotheology. And I just got a feeling the other day that I need to do something to bring this topic back down to earth. And so that's what I'm going to strive to do in upcoming podcasts when I take up the topic of exotheology. We're going to be talking about exotheology, but we're going to be talking about it in a way that makes sense, for folks who prefer a more down-to-earth approach. We'll still have the cosmic aspect, but we're also going to see how this relates to us, here and now, in our day-to-day lives, whether you believe in extraterrestrials or not. And today's topic is psychic vampires and anger-eating demons. Now, this is kind of a fun topic to write about. And most people, when they think about vampires, we think about Dracula, the blood-sucking vampires, and Bela Lugosi, good evening, I am Count Dracula. And, that's the idea we have, the understanding we have of vampires, is that these are the little bloodsuckers. Sometimes very suave and sophisticated and debonair, and other times rather ghoulish looking. But there's more vampires out there than just the bloodsuckers. And, the blood-sucking vampires, for most of us, unless you live in an area that's infested with ticks, that's another form of blood-sucking vampire. But, you're probably not going to encounter, the Bela Lugosi type of Count Dracula type vampire. But when it comes to energy-sucking vampires and psychic vampires, this is something that I would say that virtually every human being encounters this entity virtually on a daily basis. And most of the time, we are unaware of these vampires. these people that seem to have the ability to just suck our energy out of us. Just just by doing nothing more than just being themselves. And I think if you reflect, you know what I'm talking about. How many times have you encountered a person who just seems to feed off of negativity? You know, they stir up a fight because it makes them feel good. Or even more common is a person that you just encounter and they have such a tale of woe, so many problems, and you talk to them hoping that you can cheer them up, and you walk away from the encounter just feeling drained, emotionally drained, mentally drained, physically drained, and the other person that you were trying to help walks away feeling better. And they say, "Oh, I'm so glad I ran into you. I'm so glad we had this little talk." And they walk away feeling much better, and you are feeling down in the dumps, and you just feel like you need to crawl off someplace and recharge your batteries. Well, that is one example of a psychic vampire. And for the most part, most people who behave as psychic vampires are just normal folks. They don't realize what they're doing. They just seem to do it by second nature. And so they're not evil. I want to stress that point. Most people who behave as psychic vampires are not evil. They're not like the Count Dracula that want to sink their fangs into your emotions. Some can be evil, but for the most part, most are just regular folks who just feel drained and they encounter somebody, and without even knowing it, they feed off of their energy and feel better. But one consequence is that they leave the other person feeling drained. I first became consciously aware of psychic vampires a few years ago. My wife and I, we do tarot readings, we do spiritual counseling. That's part of our work here at Temple of the Infinite Universe, is that, we advertise spiritual counseling. Now, most folks consider that to be, let's just say somewhat boring. So one method that we use to kind of make spiritual counseling a little more interesting is that we also do tarot readings. And if you understand the symbology of the tarot cards, you can actually use tarot cards as a tool to engage a person in spiritual counseling and reveal, certain truths about the person, certain tendencies about the person, and then use that as a springboard to facilitate, further and deeper discussions and relations with that person. And in our work of, doing spiritual counseling and tarot readings and just being like regular friends to a lot of people, I notice, especially with my wife, she is a deep empath. And she has certain people who will call her up to do, a counseling session with her. And she will feel pretty good, at the beginning of the session, and then afterwards just hang up the phone. Not even face-to-face contact, but just by the phone. She'll hang up the phone after a 1-hour conversation with some of her clients and just feel drained and just needing a break. And this can be, it can be a very serious problem, because what we were doing is that Heidi is such a popular tarot reader and spiritual advice giver and spiritual counselor that she was doing this practice 6 days a week. And last Christmas, my wife fell very, very gravely ill. Not so much to where she was in danger of immediate death or needing hospitalization. But for her, I mean, it was a pretty bad uh, period of just feeling sick, physically sick. So she had to take a month off. No tarot readings, no spiritual counseling, no phone calls, no emails. I did all that for her for about 30 days, and she just needed the time to get her energy back. And that's what we concluded, is that, she was being bled dry. I mean, emotionally, psychically, energetically, by some very, very good people. I mean, not demons, not people who were of ill will, but just people that, felt that they needed help, and they were able to establish a connection with Heidi, unconsciously on their part, and they were sucking away her energy. Now, we learned from that experience, and afterwards I thought, okay, Heidi, we need to start giving you 3 days off each week, and that'll be a minimum, 3 days off. So that way you have time to relax, to get your energy level built back up before we toss you back out there into the tank and let you go swimming with the sharks, or in this case, the energy vampires, psychic vampires, that were just feeding off of her. And I would say 9 times out of 10, they were feeding off of her unaware. And since we made that decision, that we started that practice back in January of this year, and she has not had a sickness since. And that is one way that we all can help to defend ourselves from people who act as psychic vampires. First of all, become aware that this is a possibility, and when it happens, become aware that it is going on. And then just take a few very simple precautions to protect yourself. Realize that you need your private space. You need your alone time. You need time to raise your own energy through the practice of meditation or other spiritual arts. And if you do not meditate, and you are in a position where you are surrounded by people that may be feeding off of your energy, and these include the occupations of, spiritual counselor, spiritual advisor, nurse, doctor, even the blood-sucking lawyers. I don't mean to be rude, but, that's the common perception of lawyers. They're just bloodsuckers. But there are a lot of very good lawyers out there that deeply care about their clients and can really give, 300% trying to help them out of their troubles. And that, too, can be draining, especially when you're working with people who are just unconscious energy vampires. And so any occupation where you're dealing with people, if you're a people person, public relations, anytime you are counseling or dealing with people who are in need, you are in a position where you are likely to be engaging with psychic vampires and being around people who will draw your energy away from you. So just realize that as nice and as noble as it is to be able to help other people, you also need to take time for yourself. And you need to take the time needed to raise your energy. And again, if you don't meditate, I would recommend, taking up a meditation practice and just spending maybe an hour each day as needed to recharge your spiritual batteries. And when you feel drained, be able to just say to the person that you're around, if it is at all possible, I need a break, or, I need to lay down, or I have an errand to run. If you have to get away from that person, then be able to feel good about diplomatically getting the heck away from that person and out of that situation until, you're able to recharge your own energy, and then you can engage with that person again in a less self-destructive manner. And, again, just remember that even though these people can drain our energy, sometimes even suck us dry, for the most part, most people that do this do it unconsciously and unawares. And just by setting up some basic boundaries, we can protect ourselves and keep ourselves out of danger. I'm going to get into the second part of this, the anger-eating demon. And here we're getting into something that is, a little less, human. But again, probably something that most of us deal with unconsciously, on a fairly regular basis. And throughout the course of this discussion, we're going to be talking about beings. Some are corporeal, like your friends and neighbors and family. Others are non-corporeal. And here we're talking more or less along the lines of spiritual entities. And yes, they do exist, and yes, they can suck your energy. And then we're also going to open up the playing field to an understanding of extraterrestrial psychic vampires. And there it gets a little more into the area of, what most people would think of as the tin hat or foil hat type of scenario. But you don't need to wear tin foil on your head. Again, you just need to take some common sense precautions to protect yourself from all of these beings. And before I get into that, I'm going to play a little song here by Barbara Leone called "The Demons." And then we're going to talk about the energy-eating demon.
Have a temper you can't control, consuming fire that'll take its toll. Do you battle with the bottle? Drive behind the wheel, full throttle. Don't be afraid to let your guard down. I won't call a spade.
Everybody's got their demons, and some are just under the surface, some are deeply hidden, but something we all have to deal with. And in regards to demons, there is such a thing as an anger-eating demon. And this is a teaching that I picked up from one of my favorite Buddhist teachers, Ajahn Brahm of the Buddhist Society of Western Australia. And he has a lovely story about an anger-eating demon. And I don't know if I can do full justice to it or not, but I'm going to give it a shot. According to this story, the emperor was outside of his palace, and into the emperor's throne room, which was being guarded by the palace guard, walked in this ugly-looking demon, about human size, maybe just a little bit smaller. And the demon walked in, casually sauntered by the palace guard. And at first, when the palace guard saw the demon, they were afraid, and they froze, and they didn't do anything. And then the demon walked into the throne room and had the audacity to just sit down right there on the emperor's throne. Now, at that point, according to the story, the palace guard found their courage, and they looked at the demon sitting on their emperor's throne, and they became enraged, and they took their spears, and they threatened the demon, and they yelled at the demon, and they said, "Get off of our emperor's throne." And every time that the palace guardsmen yelled at the demon, or threatened the demon, or raised their spear up against the demon grew in ugliness and in size. And the palace guardsmen, they continued to threaten and yell at the demon, and they tried to grab a hold of it, but they couldn't. The demon would just slip out of their grasp. And each time that they would try to physically threaten or do physical harm to the demon would grow uglier and bigger and smellier, until finally the demon was practically, his head was touching the ceiling of the throne room, and he was about ready to crush the throne that he was sitting on. And at this point, the palace guard, they didn't know what more they could do. They tried everything at their disposal. None of their weapons would really work. None of their insults or threats would work against this anger-eating demon. And at this point, of course, they didn't realize that it was an anger-eating demon. But the emperor came back, and he saw the demon sitting on his throne. And at this point, the emperor was a lot wiser than the palace guard. I guess that's why they made this guy the emperor. And he realized that he was dealing with an anger-eating demon. And so he walked up to the demon and just sat down on the floor next to the demon who was sitting on his throne. And he began talking to the demon, saying, "Oh, I'm so glad you dropped in and paid me a visit. How good of you to drop by. Is there anything I can do for you? Would you like a foot massage? Would you like some food we can order out? Normally we eat Chinese, but we can call out for pizza too." And he just began to chat with the demon and interact with the demon without anger. And with every kind word, every offer of help, the demon began to decrease in size, and he began to shrink and shrink and shrink, until finally, with one last kind word, the demon disappeared entirely, and the emperor was able to once again set down on his throne. Now, this is a parable, a story about an anger-eating demon, and this is a demon that, a personality, I guess you can say, that just wants to be attacked. It thrives on negativity. It eats up anger as if it were Miracle-Gro. Think of some people that you may have had the seemingly misfortune to encounter in your life. Some people that, you can insult them to their face, you can do everything you can to hurt their feelings and try to drive them away, and they just smile and they keep coming back for more. There are some people that just stir up a fight. They just want to stir up a fight, not because they believe that they're right about something that's worth fighting over and other people are wrong, but they just want to stir up a fight because they feed off of it. Feeling bad makes them feel good. And it seems crazy, actually. But the more that you feed this type of a personality, and they can be human, they can be non-corporeal, spiritual, as in the story of the anger-eating demon, and they can be your next-door neighbor. But whenever you encounter a personality that just feeds off of anger, kind of like an internet troll, somebody that just will insult you, attack your position just for the heck of it, and it's because they're feeding off of that negative energy. And again, sometimes it's not because the person is evil. It's because they're wired differently. And that is what they crave. So when you're trying to defend yourself against an anger-eating demon or a psychic vampire that just feeds off of your negative emotions, don't feed them more negative emotions by constantly thinking about them as vampires or demons. Some folks are just very good people who, for some reason or another, are just very, very sick. My father is one of those people. He's lived a very long life. I think he's 86 now. Will be 86. No, he is 86. Going to be 87 here in a few days. But he came down with dementia, vascular dementia. And it began, in his case, to affect his emotions. And I would notice this tendency begin to grow within him where he would just start a fight. Just because it seemed to make him feel good. And what I didn't realize that we had going on was that his brain was just degrading, because of poor circulation and the disease of dementia, possible Alzheimer's going on. We don't know that for sure. But his emotional state was just being attacked by this disease to where he just seemed to feed and thrive on negativity. And it's something that they are now controlling through the environment of a care center and antidepressants and other medications. But, it was really weird because I'd be sitting talking with him in the living room watching a pleasant show on TV, and everything would be nice and fine and happy. And then he'd have to get up and go to the bathroom, and then he'd spend about a half hour in the bathroom. And then he'd come out as if something major had just happened, and he would be talking about old hurts and old pains that, were stuff that happened like years ago. and he'd be asking me, "Hey, Ralph, did so and so really do this to me not too long ago?" And at that time, I would just think and foolishly tell him the truth and say, "Well, yeah, that happened, but that was years ago." And I mean, he wouldn't hear that part. He would hear the affirmation that yes, that happened. But then he'd be back on, feeling those emotions from years ago as if, it was just going on today. Something that had just happened while he was sitting there in the bathroom. And he would just be yelling and screaming and just getting all upset. And I would, if I got mad back at him, he'd feed off of that. And the only way that I could really calm him down was to focus on something nice in this present moment and just feed him not the anger that his disease seemed to crave, but feed him loving kindness. And then he'd calm down. And I mean, we could laugh then, we could enjoy another, good wholesome program on the TV. I made a conscious effort to tune in comedies and to tune out the news, anything that might be distressing. And that's how I dealt with my little anger-eating demon. But it takes a lot of energy and a lot of discipline in order to do that. But these are people that, we all are going to encounter throughout our lives. Some will not be quite that severe or that intense, and others may be even worse than what I've just described. But people that just feed off of hatred and anger and negativity. And that's what they're used to. That's what they crave. That's what they want. It seems like that's what they want to feed off of. And the more anger, the more hatred, the more combative you get with an anger-eating demon, the bigger the problem is going to get. That's what they want. That's what they crave. That's what they know how to handle that. They eat it like Miracle-Gro. But you throw some good humor at them, some loving kindness. Refuse to be hurt. Refuse to cry. I feel so sorry now looking back from my wife when that was going on with my dad. Because sometimes she would come up to visit, just say hello. And normally, before my dad got sick, he loved my wife. He thought she was great. And then during the course of his disease, he couldn't think of a good thing about her and just call her every name in the book. And there'd be times she would run out of his house crying, and I'd want to know, hey, what happened? What's going on? And find out that, Dad had lost his mind and was just wanting to inflict harm, because emotional harm, because that is what he was craving. And it takes a toll out of you. But yeah, if you refuse to cry, as hard as that may be, refuse to get angry, and just realize that you're dealing with an entity that needs help. And just don't give them the help that they think they need. Don't feed them the anger and the fear and the negative emotions. Don't feed them the Miracle-Gro. Feed them the loving kindness. And try to kill them with kindness. Not kill them physically, but kill the anger-eating demon with kindness and unconditional love. But don't be a martyr. At the same time, take care of yourself. If you are encountering a person that just tends to feed off of violence, or, and here I'm talking like more or less violent words. But I mean, it can degrade to physical violence too. But a person that just craves all this negative stuff, uh, protect yourself. Walk away. If you don't feel like you can handle it, walk away from it. And get some quiet time and do your meditation and raise your own personal energy. Now, there's another aspect of the anger eating demon that is less corporeal and more spiritual, and I'm going to get into a discussion of that here. But first, I'm going to play a song by Sophia Marie, Fear is the Enemy.
Fear is just one's enemy. Look at what you have become. Clouds of gray color, the many faces fronting you. Cast the mask behind the door. For the one who fights, the one will conquer more. Hear the screaming. Don't deny the will to live. Fear is just the enemy. Slay the beast. Do away this misery. Fear is just the enemy. Labyrinths changing every course. Close the door to every moment of your life's remorse. With this power brings a sun. For the one who fights, the one will become one. Hear the screaming. Don't deny the will to live. Fear is just the enemy. Slay the beast. Do away this misery. Fear is just the enemy. Only you can lift this curse. Let go of the darkness first. I lived a life in fear and wasted all these years. For fear is just one's enemy. Don't deny the will to live. Fear is just the enemy. Slay the beast. Do away this misery. Fear is just the enemy. Hear the screaming. Don't deny the will to live. Fear is just the enemy. For the one who fights, the one will become one. For the one who fights, the one will become one. Become one.
Okay, now so far we've dealt on the personal level with people who can behave most of the times either, unconsciously or by reason of some sort of physical or mental illness individuals who can behave like psychic vampires and anger-eating demons. Now, my next example, we're going to take it one step beyond, so to speak, and just use an example where this psychic energy that feeds off of negativity and can leave us feeling emotionally drained and just feeds off of anger and negativity. It seems to be an entity that transcends people. And for this example, I'm going to use a church. I'm not going to name the church for reasons that will become obvious. But this is a church I had the misfortune of dealing with at one point in my brick and mortar ministry. Normally, when we think of churches, we think of a place where you can just walk in, you can feel good, you can feel positive, you can just feel the love radiating from the people and even just from the church itself. And that's a beautiful, pleasant experience when it happens. That was the case with my first church that I pastored. I was a member of that church for many years before I was called out to be the pastor, and then I pastored there for an additional 6 years, and I served there in varying capacity throughout a period of about 20 years. And, deacon, elder, pastor. And when I first got involved with this church, it was a place where you could literally feel the love and just walk in and just feel like I'm home. And it made evangelism in that community extremely easy because you could ask people, hey, do you have a church home? Were you raised, in a Christian tradition? And it didn't have to be any particular Christian tradition because it was a church that was extremely inclusive. We had, disciples of Christ, we had Protestants, Catholics, Lutherans, people that previously had no church affiliation, but, wanted a church home and happened to come in through those doors. And that was the one quality about that church that made it a joy to serve and a joy to evangelize because, you could bring in people that were just sincerely looking for a church home. And they'd walk in through those doors on a Sunday morning and they'd feel like I found my home. And I'm going to say, probably at one point in time, about 90% of the folks there who were members of that church just radiated this love, and it was a love that just transcended individual people. Yes, we had individual folks that were very kind and very loving, but when we got them together in a group to worship on Sunday morning, it would just seem like that love would just be magnified and would just be a transcendent force that radiated not just within the people but also outside the people. And it was just great. Now I'm going to compare that to this other church that I was made aware of. Luckily, I was never called to be the pastor of this church, but it was just the opposite. It was like if we take that first example of that church that radiated love and called that the church, well, this other church would be the anti-church. Because instead of radiating love, it radiated hate. And I thought it was just me. But we had some ministerial meetings in that church, privately, just between the pastor of that church and the area minister, sort of like the bishop of our denomination at that time, and other pastors who were all coming together to help support one another in ministry. And this meeting would sometimes be held in this anti-church to support this the pastors, I should say, because this church was had such a negative dynamic going on there that it would just eat pastors alive. Mentally, emotionally, spiritually. I know of a couple of young pastors who came in there fresh out of seminary and would just feel like, okay, I've got a mission here. I'm going to change this church, and we're going to bring the love of Jesus right into it. And after a year or 2 years, they would be so burned out, just so eaten alive emotionally by this anger-eating church that they would just burn out of ministry entirely and just get the heck out of there. And just, hey, I'd rather be a plumber than to do this job anymore. And this was something that the area minister was aware of. And for a time, the church hierarchy, the denominational heads, dealt with the problem by bringing in what they call an intentional interim, a minister who would be an older minister who was more experienced in dealing with this level of anger, and would make a commitment to serve the church no more than, let's say, 6 months. And there'd be a time limit set on it. And they would come in on Sunday morning and do the work, give the sermons, minister to the people for a few days each week. Not 7 days a week, but just a few days each week. And then after they'd been in that environment for about 6 months, they would do like a tag team, tag, you're it. A new minister comes in and takes over. A fresh one that is equipped with the knowledge and the wisdom and the spiritual tools to deal with this anger-eating church demon. And I don't know what it is. I mean, I can only describe it in a metaphysical sense as just an entity that was there. It was, just as if the church itself was possessed by this negative spirit, resulting in this negative dynamic. People would go into that place, and within just a short time, would just be feeling so drained, so combative, that they would become just about as crazy as the folks who had been in that church for 20, 30, 40 years. And it was just such a sad situation to see young pastors being thrown in there. And I know of 2 good pastors who were just totally eaten alive by that anger-eating church until the denomination said, okay, we're not going to put any new guys in here. We're going to just kind of make these people settle for having these older guys who know how to handle this level of anger, and then rotate them out, after about 6 months or so. And again, when you encounter some sort of a force, a negative force, you may think it's coming out of one particular person, but you may have experienced this in perhaps the church you were raised in, or some other organization. Does not even necessarily have to be a spiritual organization or religious organization at all. It can be like the ladies' quilting bee or something like that, or any other kind of social group. And sometimes you enter into the place where the group meets, and you just get a sense of unease and just feel that there is something going on there. You can't really put your finger on it. And if you stay there long enough, you feel like you are getting sucked into that negativity. What I believe we're dealing with there in those cases is a non-corporeal spiritual entity that feeds off of negative emotions. And it can be like understood in the Christian, Judeo-Christian sense as a demon. It can be, in some cases, the spirit of someone who has passed, within that organization or within the place, the structure where that organization meets. And just like a spirit that feeds off of negative emotions. And if we acknowledge that human beings are a composite of body and soul, this makes sense. See, most of the times we think of people, we think of physical, the body, the physical person. And then that person dies, and we feel sad for the most part if it was a good person. If it was our blood-sucking enemy, then we may feel good about it. If you have your blood-sucking enemy die and you're not very spiritually advanced, yeah, you may feel pretty darn good about it. But we assume that when the body is destroyed, that the person is dead. Well, if we acknowledge that people are a composite of body and soul, then we have to recognize that after the body is died, the soul can and does live on. And so, yeah, you may have a person who was, kind of like Charles Manson or Ted Bundy or, some sort of psychotic mass murderer who dies in a house, let's say, and they take the body out, but the spirit remains behind. And that spiritual entity can continue to cause problems. Perhaps not on the physical level directly, but they can play with our emotions and suck away our energy, just like a psychic vampire, and just become an anger-eating demon. How do we protect ourselves from this kind of spiritual, non-corporeal entity that can attack us on an emotional and spiritual level like that? Well, one method is to, of course, be aware that it is happening when it is happening. A lot of times folks tend to deny what they cannot see with their eyes or touch with their hands. And so they may think that, it's nonsense, this can't be happening, this can't be going on, and they're just in complete denial about this. And as long as you are in denial about it, you can't do anything to protect yourself from it. Now, when you begin to open up the possibility that these things can happen, and then you have your eyes wide open enough to be able to see it when it is happening, then you can take precautions. You can choose to just avoid that location. Avoid that church or that fellowship or that meeting hall or that home. Now, if you are committed in some way, to that area, like being the minister of a hate-eating church, you may not have that luxury. What you can do, and this is something that a lot of people are completely unaware of, but you have the ability to control your emotions. I'm going to say that again because when I first heard this 30 years ago, it blew me away. You have the ability to control your emotions. How many times have you gone through life and heard somebody say, "Oh, you make me feel so good. You make me so very happy. I'm so glad you came into my life. Yeah. Yeah, you make me feel so good. Or, how many times have you heard somebody say, "Oh God, you make me feel bad. You make me feel embarrassed. You make me feel just as low as a brick in the sidewalk." We think that other people have the power to control how we feel about ourselves and how we feel within. And we give people this power to control us, to manipulate us through our emotions simply by not taking charge of our emotional state. And it's a hermetic truth that, emotions are just like vibrations, frequencies. It's like energy frequencies. You can think of love as being a higher energy frequency. And when you vibrate with love, you're vibrating, operating off of a higher frequency. When you're operating out of the base levels of, say, fear or anger, fear is a crippling emotional state. And in a state of fear, in a mindset of fear, we are vibrating at a much lower vibratory frequency. And there's not much we can do. It's kind of like you're like a rock. You're stuck in that state. But when you're operating off of a higher emotional state, vibrating with a higher frequency of love, you're not a rock anymore. You're like a bird or a butterfly. Hey, you can fly. You can do things. Well, maybe not physically fly, but it's an allegory, a metaphor. You just feel liberated. You feel good. You feel light and airy. And you have the power to alter your emotional state by focusing on the frequency at which you want to vibrate. Put this in less esoteric terms. If you're sad and you want to be happy, focus on that which will raise that energy of happiness within you. And for folks that suffer from depression, I realize this is easier said than done. And there are folks with a certain brain chemistry that may not have the ability to do this. I recognize that, and some folks may require medical treatment before they can help themselves in this manner. But I'm going to say for about 95% of the rest of us, we can change our emotional state by focusing on the state we desire to have. I'm going to use a concrete example. There are times, I do a lot of internet work, and we live in an area where the internet connection is terrible. And there are some days like today when I've got a good solid connection, everything's working great, and I can just walk around doing a podcast with my traveling mic on and headphones, and everything's going great. Just feel good about it. And then there are other times when there's bad weather and a lot of rain, a lot of clouds. The internet connection is terrible. And I can start trying to do something like writing an article online and be going good, and then all of a sudden, connection's down, internet's down. And it may last for like a few minutes and then come back. It may be down for an hour. It may be down several times in 1 hour or 2 hours throughout the day. And I allow myself sometimes to get so frustrated that I will just physically pound my hand on the tabletop and let out with a few choice words. And to me, at that time, it is an outpouring of frustration that makes me feel good. Now, the other dogs and the cats in the house that were sitting peacefully enjoying their day, they hear that outburst and they run. And after a while, I began to notice that this emotional outburst that I allowed myself to experience, it was not caused by the internet. The faulty internet was just an excuse. And I can see the harm, the spiritual harm done, when the dogs run for cover, the cat runs away and glares at me with wide eyes as if it's he or she is saying, "Oh God, who rattled your cage?" And even when my wife is in the house when that happens, and I can look at her and, it's like somebody just jolted her awake. And I had to take responsibility for these little emotional outbursts because of the effect, the negative effect it was having on other people, other beings within the house. And I had to put this hermetic truth into practice. It's a truth that I've known for quite a few years, but there's another truth that if you know something, but you don't do it, it's like not knowing it at all. If you know it intellectually, but you do not incorporate it into your heart and into your actions and allow it to affect your outer world, it's like not knowing at all. And so I had to take that head knowledge and realize I'm not going to allow the computer and the internet connection to tell me whether I'm having a good day or a bad day. Instead, I am taking charge. And now when the internet connection goes bad, I can still get upset. But I'm not pounding my fist on the table and yelling a few choice words and upsetting everybody in the house. I'm learning to just kind of smile and think, okay, CenturyLink is having a bad day again today, and I'm just going to have to roll with it. And go focus on something else. Go take a walk. Go stop and take a deep breath and count to 10. Some people may need to count to 100. It depends. But yeah, focus your energy not on what you think is upsetting you, but choose to focus your energy on something good and something positive. What we focus on grows. What we focus on is what we will eventually begin to develop within our life. So when you feel like you are in a dynamic or a place that you think you might be having some problems with a spiritual entity, kind of making you feel bad and feeding off of those negative energies, you can choose to acknowledge that something is happening here. You may not know exactly what, but you can make the conscious choice to feel the way you want to feel, not the way somebody else or something else wants you to feel. There are people who can control us, just like, pushing buttons on a robot. And as long as we continue to respond like a robot, these people will continue to keep pushing those buttons. But we have a choice where we can consciously unwire those buttons to where a person can push those buttons and then we can just smile and say, I know the game you're trying to play, and your Jedi mind tricks don't work on me. There's a big truth to that statement. Your Jedi mind tricks don't work on me. And there are a lot of people that play those Jedi mind tricks, or think that can play those Jedi mind tricks on us. But we don't have to play along. We can choose to feel the way we want to feel. And take the power away from people that try to control and manipulate us through emotions. And it takes time, but yeah, just focus on what you want and not on what other people are telling us we should be feeling. So take control of your emotions. And it is a discipline. It takes time to do. But it is worthwhile once we start to get the hang of it. Going to play another song here by Prometheus, and then I think it's about time to wrap this up. I've been going on for 72 minutes. So, we're going to play a song and then bring this all together.
It's just been dark at night. Once the sun goes down, there's no more heat and no light. But the cold outside, it only chills through the bones. So I walk under the limb instead of sleeping alone. Off in the distance, my heart felt the glow upon the mountain of knowledge where it's forbidden to go. I was this lady aflame. The moment I saw her, it was clear why I came. This is a daughter of Zeus, yeah, those are clearly the arms. Now I got something in mind, I gotta steal from the gods. She moves with the flicker, she glows red, orange, and blue. And come with me, child, I'll light my whole world with you. Started brewing as we ran down the hill. It's gathering the darkness with a pissed off God's will. Now Zeus is at my heels, cause I defied divine plan. For the love of this woman, I brought fire to man. She said, what's your name? I said, there's much to discuss, but the humans below call me Prometheus.
Okay, now so far I've kept this all pretty much down to earth. Now, you may be asking yourself, what does all this have to do with exotheology? Well, when we're talking about psychic vampires and anger-eating demons and entities, let's call them, that can feed off of our negative emotions and drain us emotionally and mentally and energetically, my training, by virtue of having been raised Roman Catholic with a desire to serve as a priest within the Roman Catholic tradition, and having gone to high school seminary and the major seminaries, and just by virtue of that training, I tend to look upon these non-corporeal spiritual entities as either angels or demons. That's the terminology I was raised with. Now, in the last few years, as I have begun studies of UFO phenomenon, the possibility of extraterrestrial life, and particularly listening to the testimonies that have been given by people who claim to have made contact with extraterrestrial biological entities, I have begun to open the door in my understanding that when we're dealing with a non-corporeal being, or a being that seems to be non-corporeal, we might actually not be dealing with something that church tradition has explained away as being like an angel or as a demon, but we may be dealing with an extraterrestrial race or a member of an extraterrestrial race that has the ability to read our thoughts, read our minds, communicate telepathically, and project their own feelings and desires and thoughts into our brain pan. Now, that's where I realize some folks listening may think, okay, we've entered into the tin foil zone where you're saying I need to make a hat out of aluminum foil and wear that on my head to block out the radio waves from Jupiter. And I'm not saying that at all. But if you do, make sure it's shiny side out. That reflects the radio waves much better. Shiny side in will keep them bottled up in your skull. And I say that just jokingly, but what we need to do is just realize that when we learn about extraterrestrials, there's a hermetic truth. As above, so below. And just like here on Earth, we have a collection of good people and bad people. And for the most part, we just have people that are just wanting to live their lives and be happy and just be content and just go through their lives without making waves, just live. The same thing applies to extraterrestrial life. It may look quite a bit different from us, but they too are going to have a collection of good people and bad people. And just like here on Earth, we have some folks that are pretty well advanced when it comes to psychic abilities, like mind reading and telepathy and perhaps even projecting their thoughts and their attitudes to other people. So too the extraterrestrial races will have those same abilities and may even be more advanced in their understanding of these things than we currently are at our current time and place in our spiritual growth and evolution. So a lot of the things that I've said here about how to defend ourselves from earthly people, our friends and our neighbors who act and behave like psychic vampires and anger-eating demons, they too will apply to the extraterrestrial races, assuming that they exist, which I think is like a 100% certainty when you consider the vastness of the universe. And if we assume to be true the testimony given by contactees or people who claim to be contactees, when they say that these beings have the ability to communicate through telepathy. What we need to focus on is not putting a tinfoil hat on, but just owning our emotions. Focus on being yourself. If you get the feeling, and this takes mindfulness. This is an old Buddhist teaching of mindfulness. Be aware of who you are. And when you start feeling things that seem to be foreign to you, seem to be alien to you, stuff that just comes at you from out of the blue, question it and say to yourself, this is not who I want to be right now. I don't want to be fearful. I want to be joyful. And then focus on that joy. Focus on that positive energy. We are not just physical beings. We are beings that do. We radiate energy. If you've heard of the chakras, you know the heart chakra is something that extends something like 3 foot away. You know, you project it 3 feet in any direction from your body. And I think a lot of people have had this experience where you walk into a room and there's a peaceful person in that room. And they just project that peace where they can just reach out and touch you emotionally without saying a word and without laying a hand physically on you. They're literally touching you with their positive energy. And this energy field has been, with the right equipment, we can sense it. We know that it can be projected like 3 foot, 6 foot, with some people perhaps even much further. And if you get an entire city or an entire community together and get them feeling, vibrating at a certain emotional frequency, like when the World Trade Center came down and New York was traumatized and the entire United States was traumatized, that sent out a negative energy field that could be seen from outer space. And so when we consider that humans can feed off of our emotional state, be it, for the better or for the worse, other beings away from this earth, away from this planet, with the right equipment, with the right sensitivity, can also feed off of our emotional states when it affects people like within an entire community, an entire city, an entire nation, or an entire world. And this is where we really need to practice mindfulness, because in this age of mass media and social media, where thoughts and emotions and feelings can be spread around the world at the speed of light, we need to be careful what we get sucked into. We need to be able to master our emotions. And if we feel that we're being led down a path we don't want to go on, we need to feel like we have the freedom, the liberty to say no. I'm not going to feel that way today. And it takes discipline. It takes most people don't really consider that they should limit the amount of TV that they watch or the amount of social media that they engage in. And Facebook did a mind control experiment not too long ago where they were seeing if they could affect people's emotions by putting nothing but negative stuff on their Facebook feed. And they came out and they admitted that, yeah, they were doing this. And so, yeah, we know not only is this possible, it's been done and it's being done as I speak. And what we need to do is just focus on limiting ourselves to this kind of exposure. Many people, when they turn on the news and something bad is happening, like, it seems like a week doesn't go by without a shooting or a terrorist attack or a bombing somewhere in the world. And it seems that when those things happen, that's what the mainstream media wants us to focus on. And if we're not careful, we can be in a position where we wake up feeling good about life, the universe, and everything, feeling good about ourselves, and then we turn on the news and we see a disaster that's happened. And we just focus on that disaster. And the news will just keep repeating, the same story about the bombing or the shooting or the truck running into a group of people or things like that, or an earthquake or a tsunami or a nuclear power plant that's threatening to melt down. And we can focus on all those negative things being thrown at us almost non-stop 24/7. Or we can say that, no, I recognize that this stuff is going on, but I also recognize that there's a lot of good in this world, good that is not being focused on in the mainstream media. And I am just not going to allow myself to be sucked into that feeling of negativity and just make the conscious choice to step away from the TV, turn it off, maybe watch it maybe a few hours a week to keep up with the bad stuff that's going on in the world, and then turn it off and focus on the good stuff. The good stuff that is also going on in this world, in your community, all around you, but the good stuff that is not being reported on, for the most part, in the mainstream media. And of course, I would say we all should be aware of the manipulation that's been going on in the mainstream media. And we can ask ourselves the question, okay, why? Why is the mainstream media wanting to manipulate my feelings, my thoughts, my emotions, if I let them? And I've come up with 3 reasons. It starts off bad, and they get progressively worse. So hang on to your hats. The first reason that the mainstream media wants to spread fear and manipulate our emotions and make us more fearful, uptight people is because it makes money. As human beings, we tend to be addicted to terror, to fear, to things like that. I don't know why, it just seems to be the way a lot of us are wired. But there's an old saying in the media, if it bleeds, it sells. And, put it on page 1 or, broadcast that on the TV and the radio, as often as you can. And that ropes people in. If it bleeds, if it screams, then okay, it's something that we need to cover. Unless, of course, it makes our company look bad or our country look bad, and then we hide it and we cover it up and we focus on something else. If the terrorists are doing it, it's bad. If we're doing it, well, there's a reason for it and it's got to be good, right? But yeah, we have that selective coverage, and it always tends to focus on the negative, trying to bring out the fear in our hearts because it makes money. That's what people pay attention to. If you pay attention to the number of shootings throughout the United States, the number of burglaries, the number of random acts of violence, it's a good way to sell guns. You may think, boy, there's shootings going on everywhere. I need a gun to protect myself. Or I need an alarm system, or I need a bigger lock on the door. I need security. And, they use this fear to sell those things. And they also use that fear to keep us more easily manipulated, to keep us under control. It's a truth that if you take a smart person and you scare them and you make them feel afraid, they can be led to do some pretty stupid things. A fearful population is a stupid population. We make stupid mass decisions when we're scared. We can go from like individually being philosophers to when we're all in a group and the group is scared, panicky, paranoid, we can become tyrants and just wild animals. And if the media wants to keep a population under the control of, say, a corporation or a government, by selling us fear, they drop our IQ down a few notches, and they make us more easy to control, more easy to manipulate. And that's the second reason why the media would want to spread fear and negative energy. It makes us more malleable to the powers that be. And the third reason, and this is kind of like even more darker and sinister, as far as I can see anyway, is that they keep us in a state of fear and manipulate that negative energy to feed the needs of the psychic vampires and psychotics who are currently in power in so many places. The establishment that everybody has been ranting and raving about over the past year or so. There are many different levels to the establishment. There's the political establishment, and yes, it is to their benefit if they keep the population scared and easy to control. There's a financial establishment, a business establishment, spiritual establishment. The 1970s, 1980s, we had something called the Satanic Panic. And a lot of churches prospered off of that because people were running around thinking that, oh my God, the devil is walking around the streets like anybody can become possessed. And religious establishments were selling that fear. Books about demonology were easy to sell. Movies about demonology, exorcisms, things like that made a lot of money. And a lot of churches could get people into the doors by saying, hey, we are into spiritual warfare. We are combating the devil. And come on in. If you think your next door neighbor is a witch, then come on in here and we'll give you the tools to defend yourself. And without even realizing that most people who call themselves witches or Wiccans are not evil. They're just good people with a different slant on things. And we're just so easily convinced to see the devil in everything that we fail to take personal responsibility for our own weaknesses and take responsibility to correct our own mistakes. I do believe that there is a devil that exists, and we have to fight this entity within our own hearts by focusing on the positive, not the negative. And so, the mainstream media can spread fear and just group psychosis to feed the needs of people in power that feed off of that negative energy. People at all levels of the various establishments that need their fix of fear from the folks down below. And this, of course, can include human beings who are members of the elite, who are able to pull the strings of so many people down below them. And it also can apply to non-human extraterrestrial entities that are pulling the strings, or have been said to be pulling the strings of some of the political and business and religious elite. And so that's why the mainstream media manipulates fear. It's because they make money, just greed. They make money doing it. They keep us scared and easy to manipulate, and they can sell us stuff in that state of confusion to make even more money. And then it feeds the needs of that small group of people at the top, not all, but some, who just have a psychotic need to feed off of that negativity so that they themselves can feel good. And these are things to watch out for. And again, we can defend ourselves from this very easily by limiting our exposure to the news. And that includes, the mainstream media, also the alternative media, and the social media. Take some time to raise mindfulness within yourself. Take the time to get to know yourself. Take the time to know who you are at the deepest possible level. And then when you are dealing with people who want you to feel something contrary to who you are, to think in a way that is contrary to who you are, who you want to be, or who you want to become, then acknowledge that you have the power to say no, to not play that game, to turn off the media and just say, hey, I need a break. I'm going to spend only maybe 1 hour a day with the media, and then I'm going to get out, I'm going to take a walk in nature, going to watch the squirrels, going to, get in touch with a few people, spend time with my friends, spend some time in meditation with my higher power, the divine source of my understanding, and commune with the universe. And for those people who do not practice meditation, that may sound silly, but it actually is a practice that gives us great strength and grounds us for life in the day-to-day world, so that we can live a life that makes us hard to control, hard to manipulate, and live a life that brings us joy rather than confusion. So that's our presentation today. I was going to do a little talk on interfaith harmony, but I am going to leave that for another time. Instead, I'm going to get on with our Christmas celebration here. I think it's time now for folks in the house here to start waking up and celebrate. So we're going to make a pot of coffee and kind of see what Santa brought everybody. So I wish you all a blessed day of peace, of freedom, of liberation. And if you are, at this time of year, forced to deal with certain psychic vampires or anger-eating demons, try to be patient, try to be tolerant, smile, and just try to overcome it with joy. And if you have to, know that this too shall pass, and if things get too bad, just get the heck out of Dodge. I'm going to play a song here by Hunter and the Dirty Jacks called Rock and Roll Soul, and then after that we're going to close out with Silent Night. So until later, you all take care, and we will catch you again in the infinite universe.
Young man, take a look at me now. I'm down to play today. You can string me up and bring the crowd. That's what I need to say. Voice of an angel, entertainment for a king. No rhythm to speak, I wish to God you could sing. Modern Helen of Troy in a old style. Could start a religion with a launch coat smile. And I was born with a rock and roll soul. Here's what I need, make me whole. Yeah, I was born with a rock and roll soul. Here's what I need, make me whole. Yeah. Check out, yeah, bow, yeah, bow. Young man, need to find my way to bring this to the top. I got the locks and the golden chops. There's no way this won't pop. Young man, I'm ready to roll. I'm gonna storm this stage tonight. Just play this song. It won't take long to see our name and dancing. I was born with a rock and roll soul. Here's what I need, make me whole. I was born with a rock and roll soul. Here's what I need, make me whole. Check out, move about, yeah, yeah. Baby, down, bow, bow, bow. Here's what I need.